Hey guys, welcome inside the Lambo Speak podcast. We have a very special episode for you today. First, we wanted to wish everybody a happy 4th of July. I hope we're recording on 4th of July, so I hope everybody has a good barbecue or, see some great fireworks, whatever you guys have planned today. I'm Bobby Winter. You could find me on Twitter at Bobby A. Winter. And we don't have Nate today. Nate is on vacation. He's in Michigan with his family and has terrible reception up there as well. So we have one of our own here in the Title Tribe. This is Joseph Clark. And Joseph, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and the type of work you've been doing and where we could find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm happy to fill in for my good friend Nate. Nate, I know you're going to be watching this and I hope you're enjoying vacation with your family. Definitely well earned. My Twitter handle is at JoJ_Clark, and I am one of Bobby's colleagues here at Toilets to Titles, and I host a Wednesday night show. I'm a Giants fan, but I am a totally great respect. I have so much respect for Packers history, Packers lore, the Packers team, and above all, the Packers fan base. So I'm very, very happy to be here talking Packers, and I'm very knowledgeable about the Packers too. So they're actually one of my favorite NFC teams. I've got no ill will against them, unlike some of the others in my division. But I host a Wednesday night show. It starts around 8:15 ish Eastern Standard Time. It's called New York Giants Corner, and I usually do the Sunday night show too, Sunday Night Live with Justin, George, and a few of the other guys too. So been here for 2 years now, and everything's been going great. And just get my hands involved more and more, and really enjoying it, man. But happy Independence Day to everyone. Hope everyone has a great time, with their families, parades, hot dog eating contests, fireworks. Be careful with the fireworks. Don't go JPP on yourself and everything. Just be a little careful.
Oh yeah,
Don't
my
show
dog
up.
was losing her mind last night. We went out to the fireworks, and as soon as I came home, I was like, "Oh, we shouldn't have left the dog alone." I came inside, and it was like, those scenes where like the dog sees somebody for the first time, and it's like
Mhm.
losing its mind. Like that's what it was like when we walked in the door, and
Yeah,
I felt so bad.
I know. I think our dog Melvin. I shouldn't even mention the name because he's infamous for interrupting my podcast. And I gave him a treat to hold him over for a little bit. But he's like 7 years old now, so I think he's kind of used to it. And like our fireworks show in our town is, it's probably like a half mile down the road. He definitely hears it.
Yeah.
But I think when we come back now, I think he's okay. He used to be more frazzled when he was younger, but he's a veteran now. He knows what's going on.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to have you on today. Why don't you tell them all of the announcements, of stuff that we have going on?
Absolutely. Let's get through this, guys. The bells and whistles, as I like to refer to them. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Give us that 5-star Apple review. All of that really helps us out a lot. Where you can find our shows: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Podbean, and Spotify. Our beautiful, wonderful website, toiletstotitles.com, has all of our videos, all of our articles. We originally started off as fantasy football advice, which is still a big part of what we do. But we also cover NFL news. We have team-centric shows like the one you're watching right now. We do the NFL draft. I just want to say, like, if you'd be disappointed in yourself if you did not watch our draft content this past spring, because we had boots on the ground at Senior Bowl, at Combine, and even at the draft, and we were getting the picks actually before, like a minute before they were announced on stage. So we were actually announcing the picks like a minute before they were announced on stage. So it was really cool. So next year, make sure you're watching Toilets and Titles during the draft. You won't be disappointed. Also, we partnered with I should say, at the CFB Nation. They are the College Football Nation. They cover the college football content. As soon as those players graduate, as soon as they start entering the draft, Toilets and Titles takes them over there. Also, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. If you go there, you can learn how you can further support our program. And I just want to say thank you to our current Patreon supporters. We appreciate you appreciating us. And last but not least, Gilded. We have a chat in the Gilded app. We're up to like 150 people in there right now. Feel free, please reach out to us to join. You can hit me up, Bobby. You can go to @toiletstitles.com, any one of us, and we'll get you in. We talk football all the time. If you have any questions in terms of, like, especially when it comes to fantasy football, we've got plenty of well-seasoned, very knowledgeable fantasy football experts in our Gilded chat who are always happy to give advice. You want to bounce ideas off of us, come on in. We appreciate you. Come on into Gilded, and we'd love to have you. We have a really good time. And then we also do a lot of mock drafts. I think George Reed hosts like 3 mock drafts a week right now in the off season. So, you could always participate in those as well. And Bobby, those are the bells and whistles. Let's talk some Packers football, baby.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to get into it. So obviously today, as you see in the title, we're talking about the Packers pass catchers. So I don't know if you knew this, but the Packers pass catchers are young, and not just young, but like historically young.
Yeah.
There's only been 2 other examples of teams in the last like 30 plus years that have had young pass catchers like this. There was a team in the early 90s and also the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. So yikes. But
you're not the Cleveland Browns.
We are not. Browns. Certainly not. No.
And Cleveland Brown fans, no offense, but you know what we mean.
For sure. So by pass catchers, I'm talking about wide receivers and tight ends. So right now, the Packers only have 3 pass catching wide receivers that have taken NFL snaps in the regular season, all 3 of which were drafted last year. So, I mean, we're talking historically young. So there is obviously pros and cons to this. There's parts of the fan base that have been clamoring for them to sign a veteran wide receiver. There's also parts of the fan base that believe that, taking a veteran in could just be taking snaps away from these young receivers. So I really wanted to get into the pros and cons of, the decisions that the team has made. And I mean, there is still time, it's only July. They could potentially sign a veteran wide receiver. But I think the plan right now is for the team to grow together. They're young, right? Jordan Love this is his 4th season going into the NFL, but it only his 1st season as a starter. So all of these receivers he is going to grow with, and all these receivers have never had another quarterback other than, in college. So the ability for them to grow together is good. Actually, Jordan Love was quoted, it's easier with younger guys, and they haven't been around other guys who will want it a certain way or to look like this. It's easier to get my point across and how I want things to run. It'll be great, which is a good point. If you're going from quarterback to quarterback, quarterbacks like things a certain way. I mean, you could look to Aaron Rodgers and how he was with his receivers, with the hand signals, and you'd see him, on a messed up play barking at his wide receivers because he likes things a certain way.
Tom Brady.
By working together and all being on the same page from day one, they're going to be off to a good head start. What do you think?
I love all those points, and I'm a huge fan of listen, I'm a Giants fan, and my organization's had a lot of success, in over the past 40 years, not the past 10 years, but the past 40 years. But I've always been not afraid of starting over. And it's different from an outside perspective. I see it being different from you guys too, from the Packers fans, because you went back-to-back legendary quarterbacks.
Right.
And in my mind, it's not even Hall of Fame. It's like this separate wing within the Hall of Fame where you get like the best of the best, and that's the legendary wing, in my opinion. You need to put Favre and Rodgers, Rodgers one day in there. They are like 2 of the very best quarterbacks of all time. So I get the uncertainty as a fan, like you don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Love. But I'm a huge fan of when you see things aren't working, teams getting older, quarterback is I still think Rodgers has some time in him, but you've got a young quarterback in pocket. You're rebuilding. I like that. I like that kind of just cutting the cord. We're going to rebuild, and whatever happens, happens. And I think you guys have actually the Packers have done a very nice job of accumulating young talent over the past, last draft in 2022 and here in 2023. And so these guys do need time to grow and shine. And I think you saw that with the young receivers that you drafted last year, and especially Watson. But I think Romeo Doubs also flashed as well. And but I think Watson came in and he was ahead. I think he was more polished coming in anyway. But as you saw as the season went on, he got better and better and better. And it just takes time. Not every rookie is going to be like, say like OBJ or whatever wide receiver. Yeah, exactly. Coming in but I mean, geez, that was a pedigree. Like this guy, I'm not saying he had to be lights out game 1, but you couldn't be shocked when he was lights out game 1.
Sure.
So the normal timeline is you need time, and some players take a little more time than others. And but I think Watson, for the amount of time that he's a rookie, I thought he showed a lot of potential for future growth. And I think
Absolutely.
Dubs too. And I thought you guys knocked it out of the park. I thought you did it really well for your draft class last year. And I was really impressed with your draft class this year. And I know you and I kind of like briefly, I was giving you kudos earlier, a few months ago, right after the draft, and I was really impressed. But I'm excited to talk about Jaden Reed. I think you guys
Mhm.
got a heck of a player there. Underrated. A lot of people, I think, really didn't know this guy, and he's actually you're going to like him a lot. I think you've done a really good job in restocking this this offense, and it is probably the first time in a long time where you haven't had that proven top quality quarterback, and you also haven't had that proven top quality wide receiver too. You've had decades of just outstanding wide receivers, and last year was the first year that I can recall where you didn't have one in a long time. So it is like starting off from scratch. I like Jordan Love, and maybe I'm going on too long here, but I like Jordan Love a lot. I was surprised by it like anyone else a few years ago when they drafted him, but I thought it was cool considering that Rodgers was like 33, 34 at the time. You believe in the quarterback. I liked him. He sat for a few years now, learned behind one of the best. And I'm like, for me, I'm all optimistic for your team. I really am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you made a couple of really good points there. The first one being that the draft capital, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, they are all young, but the Packers have invested a lot of draft capital into the pass catching unit over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So
And I
with
didn't
this,
even mention the young tight ends.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have 2 second-round wide receivers. They have a second-round tight end, 2 third-round tight ends, and then Romeo Dobbs as the fourth-round tight end,
Mhm.
or excuse me, as a fourth-round wide receiver. And
Yep.
like you pointed out, like Dobbs came into the league a more polished receiver than Watson. Watson obviously started to put it together towards the end of the year, and he looks like he could be something really special. As a matter of fact, when I have my fantasy draft towards the end of August, he's definitely one of the players I'm going to be targeting because I think he's easily going to be wide receiver one on this team.
Same here.
And the other thing that you had mentioned, which I hadn't really thought about, was this whole starting over thing. So, like, even like you said, moving on from Favre to Rodgers, we had excellent quarterback play for 30 years, but they never actually really started over, and they kind of are this year. Because when
Mhm.
Rodgers took over for Favre, I mean, Rodgers had a bevy of talent of pass catchers. He had Donald
Exactly.
Driver, who was a Pro Bowler. He had Greg
Phenomenal.
Jennings, who was a budding star. I mean, he had veteran receivers to throw to, people who he had confidence in and could rely on, and
Mhm.
and threw the ball to in practice for 3 years.
Mhm.
Jordan Love doesn't have that, and for better or for worse, I guess we'll find out this year. Um, Not having a veteran there could be a bad thing. And how I mean that is like when you need a bucket, right? On third down, right? Somebody who can just move the chains, somebody that you can rely on. They don't know if they have that right now. So like if it was
Right.
third and
Mhm.
4 and they needed to move the chains, you knew it was going to Devontae Adams, right? For
Mhm.
years, that's how it was. So they really need to figure out kind of what they have in the players that they've drafted over the last 2 years. Even just signing somebody now as somebody who could do that,
DeAndre
it could
Hopkins.
be. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's still out there. He's I guess the betting favorite right now is New
New
England.
England, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what everyone's saying. Well, I'll believe it when I see it.
for sure. But yeah, or even just having the veteran presence in the wide receiver room, somebody to show them like
Yes.
tips and tricks, somebody who can show them their release package and, hey, when you see this, you should be doing this. Although I guess that's what a wide receivers coach is there for, anyways. Like you shouldn't be signing a player to coach. You know what I mean? You should be signing a player for production, right?
Yeah, the
So,
presence means so much because it is peer to peer. Not
mhm,
that a coach can't be a peer, but like the actual in-game experience from a wide receiver's point of view, or take any unit, say cornerback. Like it's the veteran presence does mean a lot. And like me myself, like I said, I'm excited for your team because I believe I like cutting the cord and just starting off with youth movements myself. And me myself, I'm very excited about Jordan Love. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. Um, but no, I agree with you too. As excited as I am for like the young pass receivers on this team, pass catchers on this team, a veteran presence would be good. And it doesn't even have to be, and that is a con. Like I do think it doesn't even need to be someone the talent of DeAndre Hopkins,
Right.
but still someone who's been around the league, someone who has had good success and a good locker room guy. Like that would be helpful.
Yeah, another name I was thinking too would be like a Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
have him run a slant on third down, like that was like his specialty. It was what he was known for years. But another advantage of having such a young pass catching unit is they're very inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan, I think, is if they do grow together and they do work out, well, now you don't have a lot of actual like cap space invested in your pass catchers, which allows you to build your team around that. Some of these guys will work out, hopefully. And if they do, they will get paid. But I mean, that will be years down the line. That'll be after they figure out what they have in Jordan Love. It'll be after they figure out what they have left with some of these veteran players that they're paying, like David Bakhtiari or Kenny Clark.
Yeah, right now, you're right. I love that point because right now I think you've drafted talent, and we're going to see whether or not they shine out this year or next year for the pass catchers. But that's a great point that you can actually, with some of the, offensive linemen getting older, some of the other players getting older around the, different units on both sides of the ball, you can use that money to, the money that you have now for the next like 2 or 3 years, at least to address those other positions of need. And I look at like the guys you drafted over the past few years. I'm like, man, you guys you could legitimately. It's hard to get 3 draft picks, to work out all together, but potentially you really do have a number 1 in Watson. I think you're going to have a good number 2 in Jaden Reed. I believe in that dude. And then Romeo, I think it wind up being a number 3, and who knows, maybe he could be a number 1 as well. But I think you've got like those positions filled there, and they're young, and we'll see how it goes. But we haven't even touched on the tight ends, which I remember it wasn't until after the draft that I realized you took 2 promising young tight ends, and in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, and like that's something else you should be excited too. These are 2 like excellent athletes, athletic tight ends, and I think it bodes well, for this young team that your young quarterback is going to have a bevy of young pass catchers. They're all going to grow together.
Absolutely. I mean, we said in our previous episodes that this is the most athletic tight end room that the Packers have had in over a decade. So the tight end hasn't really been a featured pass catcher in the Packers offense since probably 2011, 2012. Yeah. So, I mean, the Robert Tonyan had a really good year in one of those Aaron Rodgers MVP seasons. And once the injury happened, it seemed like he couldn't really replicate that. Now he's no longer on the team. So it's gonna really fall to these 2 rookie tight ends, because I don't think they're going to be using what's his name? Josiah DeGuara as like a traditional tight end. He's been used mostly as like an H-back / fullback. Now that could change now with Mercedes Lewis and Robert Tonyan no longer on the team. But I think that they drafted these 2 tight ends high with a purpose, that they knew that they needed to evolve the offense, that this isn't going to be Aaron Rodgers' offense anymore. This is going to look more like what Matt LaFleur wanted when he first got hired. This is going to be the closest iteration to what Matt LaFleur wants to play. And if you look at like other teams that have that similar, Shanahan style offense, like San Francisco, for instance, they have George Kittle. George Kittle is a featured player in that offense, and he's highly productive. If they can get one of those 2 tight ends to sort of replicate that sort of production, it could really open up the offense, which leads me to another thing that I was thinking. The inexperience could lead to ups and downs with this offense, but you have to be patient with it. Green Bay is obviously looking to win as many games as possible, right? They're not doing this to tank or to put the label of rebuild on there. I don't even like to say that they're rebuilding. I think they're transitioning, because they are
retooling.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when you are going from a Hall of Fame quarterback to a brand new starter, you are transitioning. Now, I believe a team that's rebuilding does other things. Like they have a fire sale on their veterans and they start trading a lot of their veterans. And the Packers haven't done that. You know, they let a lot of contracts expire, which every team does. You know, a lot of players moved on to, because for one reason or another. But realistically, I think they're better positioned to compete next year because a lot of the players in the pass catching unit are going to be taking year 2 and year 3 leaps at the same time. So a lot of these guys, especially tight end is a position that usually takes a long time to develop. So by giving them time to develop alongside these other pass catchers, I mean, this unit could look completely different next year with the same players.
Yeah, the development, I agree. It's, the development these guys this year, and especially next year with the crop of guys you just drafted this year. Next year is going to be a big, it's going to be a big year for them. Because listen, it's not easy transitioning to the, to the NFL. I mean, maybe running back might be the only plug and play, position. To be honest with you, maybe kicker. I'm not sure, but
Sure.
on your every down weapons, like running back might be the only plug and play. So these guys have a lot to learn. So yeah, I like last year's draft, draft class, those the pass catchers. I think they're gonna, this is gonna be a big, year for them. And I think at least one of those guys, you can't count on everyone to succeed. If you can get like one of those guys, say Watson, Dubs, take your pick,
Sure.
to take a nice jump this year, you got to be happy with that. And maybe both of them do.
Mm-hmm.
And then this year, I mean, with the guys that with the players you drafted this year, and I've got the list up here again anyway. I'm just looking at, you took I'm just looking at the pass catchers. You took Musgrave in the second, and you took Kraft in the third.
Mm-hmm.
Those are early round picks. Those are day 2 picks, and those guys are taken for a reason. Those guys are going to be used. How effective they will be, how quickly they will be, how quickly that will be, remains to be seen. There is a process to this, in terms of development. But those guys were taken in the second and third round for a reason. They're going to be used. And so that totally, like you mentioned earlier, with what LaFleur wants to do, that's an easy indication of that. He intends on incorporating tight end play, into this offense. And I'd be excited about that because I know you guys haven't really had, like an outstanding tight end in a long time. And, I think that's going to change. But the good thing too is that, you have really good running backs to rely upon. And like that is a young quarterback. I mean, any offense should want to be, dual threat and have a running game that they can count on at any point in the game. And but that is, in my opinion, probably a young quarterback's best friend is a really good running game where obviously you can hand it off, and you've got accomplished guys, headlined by Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing to have when you are transitioning / retooling.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually one of the other things I was going to mention was because they're so inexperienced, like a lot of teams are going to see this and they're probably going to play the Packers a certain way. They're probably going to load the box because they know right now the strength of the offense is the run game. Aaron Jones ages like a fine wine. He just seems to get better and better every single year. And with this inexperience, and you saw it last year too with the wide receivers that they drafted, they needed to play. They needed to play right away. I mean, they had some injuries in the beginning of the year that they were relying on Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. And I mean, you saw the struggles, but with those struggles, it also comes with, experience and learning and they almost had to develop faster, which actually might not be a bad thing. I mean, if you're relying on these guys to develop and if you're throwing them into the fire right away, they're going to learn, they're going to make their mistakes early and could develop faster. Now, it could be a horror show in the beginning of the season. They could be loading the box and making a ton of mistakes, and there could be a lot of ups and downs with the offense. But I think that the second half of the season, you're going to see a completely different Packers offense than you will in the first half of the season.
And that totally makes a lot of sense, because you're giving your chance. You know what? Listen, and I'm a Giants fan, and so I'm gonna easiest thing for me to my correlation and analogies is from the Giants fan perspective from my team. In last year, we relied on our one superstar, and that was Saquon Barkley. And the first half of the year, and don't get me wrong, throughout the whole entire year, he was our best player. It's not like we were stocked in superstar talent or anything. But by the second half of the year, that had been finally figured out. Defenses, I don't know what took him so long, started stacking the box more, against our proven running back who was fully healthy, and playing like a superstar. He was partly injured too, but when you start focusing on that number one player who stands out against everyone else, I don't know what took defenses so long, but they were able to stymie the Giants offense more. The Giants offense then transitioned to more passing, and that was the second half of the year, and that was also, but you also had finally for our team, and I think it's similar to your situation where they weren't necessarily young guys, but these were guys that were finally on the field together all the time, and that was not household names, but Darius Slayton, Richie James, and Isaiah Hodgins, who came over from Buffalo, but he knew the Dable system. They were rolling out the same three guys. So my point being is that these guys knew the offense by the middle of the season, and the team was able to transition into more of a passing team. And they were still limited anyway, but they were still able to. They did become more effective and more efficient, and that takes time. You got to let the young guys, get their experience. In that second half of the season, things can be so much different.
Mm.
And how about the offensive line, Bobby? That's one thing I'm unsure of in terms of what's going on with the Packers offensive line right now. Like you mentioned, Bakhtiari. What's going on? What's the state of the offensive line right now with the Packers? And how do you or the fan base? How do you guys see going into the season? What are the hopes? Realistic hopes? That I'm unsure of, I gotta say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe the offensive line is a strength of the offense. I mean, the Packers have always, at least over the last decade, had a pretty consistent and solid offensive line, sometimes a top tier or elite offensive line. I believe that the Packers' left side of the line is one of the best in football, if not the best in football, with David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins. So the Packers actually in the draft this year, for the first time in, I forget, I think it's like 18 years or something like that, didn't draft an offensive lineman. It was kind of like a running joke that this team, for better or for worse, will always take one offensive lineman just to see if they could develop them or something.
It's a good policy to follow.
I agree. Yeah. But if you look at their previous two drafts, they went pretty heavy into the offensive line. So I was looking at an interview with Brian Gutekunst, and they asked him, they're like, this is the first time in, however long that the Packers didn't draft an offensive lineman. What was your rationale behind that? And he was like, well, if you look at the last two drafts, we did actually invest a lot into them, and we want to give them a chance to grow, which makes a lot of sense. They've been drafting a lot of players, and obviously, even from an outsider looking in, you see that the Packers do like to cross-train their offensive linemen, because when injuries happen, you never know. I mean, look at Elton Jenkins. He's literally played every single position on the offensive line the entire time he's been on the team.
Those guys are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He needed to get paid. He's one of the best guards in the NFL. And if you need him to, he could play tackle in a pinch. I mean, he was a center in college. He's played center for us. He's remarkable. But yeah, I think the offensive line, especially the right-hand side of the offensive line, is still being ironed out. So Zach Tom, who they drafted last year, is kind of like the lead horse for right tackle right now, or if he isn't, he should be. He played very well as a rookie last year, which is very hard to do as an offensive lineman coming in. I mean, you're blocking teenagers and young men. All of a sudden, you're blocking grown men and future Hall of Famers.
I forgot. Did he play? I'm sorry. Did he play tackle or guard?
So he started at guard, but they gave him a little bit of experience at tackle, and I think that's honestly his home. The Packers don't have like a surefire right tackle right now. They have a lot of players who they're looking to see where they're going to develop and where their best position may be. So the right-hand side of the line, it may surprise some people. Obviously, the left-hand side, you can write that in ink. It's going to be Bakhtiari and Jenkins on the left. But they've been experimenting around in OTAs right now, having players like Sean Ryan take snaps at center. And Zach Tom, like I said, not filling in, but running with the ones at right tackle. So I think that those three positions, right tackle, and left guard, are probably set right now. It's really right guard and center that could potentially change this year. But I think that they feel confident in the players that they've drafted over the last 3 years, that they'll figure it out and that they'll have their starting five, and hopefully will be their starting five throughout the regular season.
Right. And like you said, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, I do know that the Packers for a long time have had at least a very solid offensive line.
Sure.
And like you said, if not elite, maybe I'll have an off season. They'll have like somewhat of a downturn, and it'll be like, more than good enough,
Sure.
So, but it's funny, what? I didn't even realize that they didn't take an offensive lineman in this draft. And it's not a criticism. The only thing that was just shocking about it to me was that they had so many picks.
For sure.
They didn't take an offensive lineman. But you know what? I like, in terms of, you said before, with the previous two drafts, they drafted quite a few offensive linemen. And this past draft in 2023, I don't think it was an outstanding offensive line draft class. I thought it was pretty good. But I thought, compared to the two previous ones, where it sounds like the Packers drafted to the strength of those were two really good offensive line classes in 21 and 22. Really good. And I think 23 was good. I think this year's 23 was good. But if you're going to be loading up an offensive lineman, I think 21 and 22 were the years to do it. So how about, all right, so let's talk about in detail. So I'm dying to pick your brain a little, but just get your perspective, or, and the fan base on the key component here, the straw that will stir the drink. And I'm not putting pressure on him. He's been in the league, been sitting on the, learning behind Aaron Rodgers for the past few years. But, when you're actually taking the helm, that's different. I'm a believer in this guy. I like him a lot coming out of college. And I'm very intrigued by him, and I have actually good expectations. I don't know if that means what type of success that means for his first year at the helm, or if it's going to be, going to take another year to really, to really take charge as like, the leader of the team and becoming a successful quarterback. But, the obvious name is Jordan Love. And I've only been reading, and I haven't been reading up all that much, but what I've been coming across is just a lot of positivity on Jordan Love, coming out of the camps.
For sure. Yeah, actually, Nate and I did a whole episode on him last week. So if you guys haven't watched that, you should go back and listen. So my opinion on Jordan Love. So Jordan Love, obviously, he's been on the team for 3 years. He's been learning behind one of the greatest to ever do it. So my opinion is you can't really expect him to come out and be lights out. Although you also can't expect him to be terrible. He has experience. He's been in the same system for 3. This is his 4th year going in with the same offensive system, the same offensive head coach. And yes, he does have inexperienced pass catchers right now, but he also saw how Rodgers prepared and saw how Rodgers communicated with his pass catchers. So everything that's been coming out of camp right now has been talking about and praising his preparation and his attention to detail. And he's not a big rah-rah guy. And honestly, Aaron Rodgers wasn't either. I don't think you need to be with the quarterback position. You just need to have, because there's so much more to the position than obviously just being talented. Because there's been a ton of first-round quarterbacks who have been drafted over the last 10 years that have had all the talent in the world, but just never put it all together.
Yeah.
It's a very cerebral position, so we don't really know what that's going to translate to into the NFL. We've only had a few snippets of what he's done in the NFL so far. He's played 1.5 games. He had the one game where Aaron Rodgers had COVID, and, they were a couple of points away from beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead, which was crazy. And then he filled in for the last quarter and a half against the Eagles and honestly played very well. It was very impressive. Darius Slay actually has a podcast, and the episode after that game, he was singing Jordan Love's praises. He was like, he looked like A-Rod out there. Like he stepped in, and honestly, there's times too, like you can see how he changed his throwing motion, and with his footwork and stuff, he actually kind of resembles Aaron Rodgers out there. And that's not like a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you're sitting and studying behind somebody who like arguably is one of the greatest to ever do it, like why would you not emulate it? Why would you not incorporate some of his stuff into your game? You know, so obviously as a Packers fan, I'm very excited. I'm 35 years old. I've had 2 starting quarterbacks my entire life. You know, I became a Packers fan when I was like 8, 9 years old.
My dad was just don't know. You don't know what it's like.
I know. I don't. So honestly, I'm excited, but I'm cautiously excited. You know, so obviously he was a first round pick for a reason. His sophomore year in college, he was exceptional. I mean, if he could have gone into the NFL draft after that season, he probably would have been a top 10 pick. It was that third season where he wasn't playing quite as well, where he lost a lot of starters. And he admits that he tried to make too much happen on his own. So, you know, obviously he could have learned from that. We'll see. And so really, yeah, like you said, he's going to be the stir for the drink. You know, the team is going to play as well as he plays. And the offensive pass catchers are going to come along as well as he can get them to come along.
That situation of how you just described his final season, it was BYU, right? He came out of BYU, I believe.
Utah.
Oh, it was Utah. Okay, that was close. Same state. And but it reminds me of, I tell people like when it comes to like Will Levis, you know, people were, you know, he fell to the second round this year, or even Sam Howell, who I'm actually kind of high on. No one else really is. You know, he came out of UNC 2 seasons ago, and I get it, but I tell people both of those quarterbacks. Even Sam Howell to more, you know, even more than Will Levis. That Sam Howell's finally is second to last year in college. He was an outstanding quarterback, and he may have been like the top quarterback entering last college season. His final college season, entering his final college season, he may have been the top quarterback in that expected draft class. However, he lost like his 2 top wide receivers who were very productive. He lost his 2 top running backs who were the best college NCAA running back tandem in football. And so his final year, he had to deal with, you know, other unproven players around him. Obviously, you know, his stock dropped quite a bit I think he was taken in, I think the 5th round by Washington.
Yeah.
And Will Levis had kind of, you know, Will Levis has a lot of developing to do as well. But, you know, I saw the same thing with him. That the way you described Love is that I think he was trying to make things happen. He lost some good talent in the previous draft class, and he was trying to make things happen. That probably trying to force it, and so I get it. But that guy, Jordan Love, has a lot of talent. And like I said, when you guys drafted him, that was a shocker. It was a shocker.
Yeah,
but I got it. I got it because, you know, Rodgers was getting to his mid-30s. You never know what's going to happen. You know, like maybe even if he wanted to play for a long time, like he's still playing, he could get to the point where he's going to drop off. So, you know, I got it. I understood it. I was totally down with that. And this guy, yeah, he's got a lot of talent. And I know I didn't hear the Darius Slay podcast, but I read about it.
Yeah.
And that meant, you know, definitely meant something to me because I don't think this guy was just being nice to a young quarterback. I think he was, you know, I think he was.
Why would he?
No, exactly. He was just giving it his honest assessment. And,
yeah,
you know, it's like, hey, you know, I have a feeling, Bobby, you're gonna be safe for the next 15 years. I just listen. Maybe I shouldn't get like, maybe I shouldn't, raise expectations too much. Or that's just my feeling. But like I said, I'm a big believer in the guy. But you know, but only time will tell. Only time will tell. But you know, like you said, like he's past few seasons, he was learning behind one of the best of all time. And, you know, and everything I know about this guy, young man, smart, high football IQ, puts in the work, and to go along with the talent. Because like you said, Bobby, I mean, the position is so cerebral, and many of these positions are, but also, especially quarterback, my God, everything you have to process, you know.
I was going to say with the whole development thing, so obviously, when they traded for Favre sat his rookie season and then sat a couple of games until the starting quarterback at the time got injured. So Favre sat. Then Rodgers sat for 3 years. Now Jordan Love has sat for 3 years. If Jordan Love comes in and plays exceptionally well and is the starting quarterback for this team for 15 years, you can guarantee that teams will start replicating what the Packers have been doing with their quarterbacks. Because how many times have you seen starting quarterbacks, or excuse me, first round quarterbacks get thrown into the fire way too early before they're ready, and the team doesn't develop them, and then all of a sudden they're considered a bust? I believe teams bust players more than players bust teams. So
100%.
if Jordan Love comes in and he looks like a veteran right away, or if he comes in and just doesn't look lost and he looks like he has commanded the offense and stuff, teams are going to have to recognize that the Packers' way of developing their quarterbacks should be replicated, you know?
Yeah.
So obviously we'll see at the end of this year.
And I agree with everything you just said, Bobby, everything you just said. So I never liked this idea, which became just like common knowledge or common sense, however you want to describe it, where, all this pressure on a young quarterback and an organization that you must win a Super Bowl or be in a Super Bowl or compete for a Super Bowl before this quarterback's rookie contract is up. Otherwise it's almost like it's worth nothing,
Right.
that you drafted this guy. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, if that's the point, if that's real, then you know what? Why even give a quarterback a second contract at all if he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet? Just, trade him, get a lot of draft picks, and draft a new one and start over. I agree with you 100%. You really want to succeed? Listen, some quarterbacks can come in and, you can throw them in the fire. You look at Joe Burrow, rookie season, was not good, but he was on a crappy team as well. But even if he was on a good team, what was he going to do? Was he really going to take the team, which he took in his second year to the Super Bowl? I think it was his second year.
Yep.
Took him to the Super Bowl. Agree, but he's more the exception than the rule. Like, you could still, even this rookie year,
Correct.
given, like, if you look at like the talent that was around him, that I still thought he played fine. It's just that he was getting his ass kicked,
Sure.
with that really bad offensive line. But I agree with everything you said in terms of, like, bad coaching destroys careers. It's you and a bad front office. Like, when you're pushing, especially a quarterback, too quickly when they're not ready, it's so cerebral. There's so much that goes into it. I don't have a problem at all in sitting a quarterback for an entire full year. Memo to Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson: don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to do that, or at least maybe wait until like the last 4 games of the season. Take him out for a test drive or something like that.
Right.
But you're kicking a quarterback in the first round, and I don't care if he sits, but you got to sit him for a few years. That's fine. He's playing behind Aaron Rodgers, for goodness sake. But you got to sit him, give him the time, and when he's actually really ready to go out there and and really start growing after being given the knowledge and the experience and learning from the veteran quarterbacks, then that's the time to throw him out there. And you start, you got to be out there to grow, but you got to set him up. You have to set him up with the right tools and to give them maximize their chance to succeed. So I agree with you. Like, I never agree with that outlook that you got to start these quarterbacks right away. Hey, they may succeed. You may break them. You may be setting them up for failure. So,
I feel
and
like
they will be calling it the Packers way.
Oh,
they will be
100%.
100%. They will be calling it the Packers way.
Yep.
They will.
For sure. So I was going to say, with the whole like throwing these first round quarterbacks into the fire right away, a lot of the problems is these teams are bad, So like, let's use the Chiefs as an
horrible
example. So they drafted Patrick Mahomes and sat Patrick Mahomes. Like, looking back, it's like, well, Patrick Mahomes is like one of the most talented, if not the most talented quarterback in the league right now. Why would you sit him? He's incredible, because Andy Reid, with all of his infinite knowledge, knew that he wasn't ready. He was wildly talented, but wasn't ready. But they had Alex Smith, so they were still competitive, But like you said, they took him out for a test drive. They had him play in that week 16 game where it didn't matter if they won or lost because they were still in the playoffs anyways. And they just kind of threw him out there to see what they had in him. Obviously, they knew what they had in him. I shouldn't say it like that, but they wanted to give him some NFL experience before inevitably he would take over as the starter the following year. But a lot of the great quarterbacks in the league have sat for whatever, a year, 2 years, 3 years. A lot of them need time to develop because, like I said earlier in the episode, it's not just a position of talent. There's so much more that goes into it. So getting thrown into the fire right away sometimes works. If you look at like a la Peyton Manning had a historically bad freshman year in the NFL. and put it together, but not every player does. And obviously the Sheriff, he's one of the smartest quarterbacks to ever play the game. So he's different. You can't compare every quarterback to him. But if you're trying to replicate things like throwing them into the fire and hoping that they'll turn into him, good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At the end of the day, yep, I agree. At the end of the day, like as a fan of of my own team, any fan of any team, you want your first round quarterback, you want him to succeed.
Of course.
And if it means they can go in there behind like an uber talented team, maybe everything around them, maybe they parachuted into a team that's fully stocked offensive line, running game, veteran wide receiver, great. It doesn't. You're probably still not going to look all that great yourself your rookie year. But really, at the end of the day, if it takes a year or even two, and you guys had Aaron Rodgers anyway, what does it matter? Like it's like you look at Aaron Rodgers now. Like, do you care? Does it matter that after all these years of incredible success that he had, that he sat for 3 years when he was sitting behind another incredible success at Favre? But who the hell cares?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when this guy is getting you into the playoffs every single year, you're going to be like, thank God, Packers way. Thank God we sat for 3 years.
Of course.
That's what it took.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back, I was pretty young back then, but when Rodgers was drafted in those 3 years afterwards, I mean, God bless the general manager at the time. He took a lot of flack about that. Like when he traded Favre, when he decided to go with Rodgers, and when he drafted Rodgers in the first place, like, this time around, because we saw how it turned out with Rodgers, like Gutekunst got some flack, but nowhere near what they got in 2005 and in 2008. But I'm going to bring it back. So obviously they didn't pick up Jordan Love's 5th-year option, but they did give him an extension, right? Mm-hmm. So they gave the Packers flexibility. So it gives them more than 1 year to see what they have in Jordan Love, because obviously this is the final year of his rookie season. So by not picking up the 5th-year option, by doing an extension instead, if Jordan Love comes out and falls on his face, well, now they don't have to pay that entire guaranteed 5th-year option. Plus, with what I was saying earlier about the pass catchers, with them all going into their year 2 and year 3 leap next year, that'll also be the final year of Jordan Love's contract. So even if they don't iron out something out with Jordan Love this year, they still have all of next year to see how this plays out with this offensive pass catching unit, to see if they do actually grow together, if Love figures it out and shows that he could be a starting quarterback in the league for the next decade. Or if they see, hey, you know what? Love looks like he's putting it together, but these pass catchers, I think we need to get him a little bit more help. Well, guess what? Aaron Rodgers' dead cap falls off next year. David Bakhtiari probably not going to be on the team next year. They're going to be in a lot better of a position next year to go with a veteran or to surround Jordan Love with more talent than they really were this year. Let's be real. The Aaron Rodgers trade really prohibited the Packers from doing a lot in free agency. So next year is really the year where we're going to see what we have in all of these players, the offensive pass catchers, as well as Jordan Love.
Right. And it's 1 year. And you guys have enough talent it's 1 year. You have enough talent to get through this year, see what happens. I don't think Jordan Love is going to be falling flat on his face at all.
I don't think so either.
Maybe he's not going to be playing, elite level or Pro Bowl level or anything like that. Geez, first year as a starter. But I think you're going to see as the season goes on, my suspicion is he's going to get better and better and better, especially by the end of the season. And they're going to be happy that they had that extension, I really like. That was a really smart move. That was really
I completely agree.
That was really savvy. And it's funny, who was that GM? I'm just curious. Who was the GM that took the flack for
Ted Thompson?
Okay, I forgot his name. I was because I actually did hear. I was listening to a few weeks ago an interview. I think it was a few years old. It wasn't like yesterday. It was like a few years old, but it was an interview about, because I think I think it occurred right after the interview occurred, like right after Rodgers was traded, and he was interviewed about everything that went down. It was the same exact situation. Obviously, we all know, back in 2007 or whatever, 2008, when Favre was traded, and just all the heat they took for drafting Rodgers, but also kind of like the heat they took at the time at pushing. It seemed like they were kind of like the fan base was upset that Favre again wanted to come back in 2008, I think it was, and they were finally like, it's we're moving on. We're moving on. Rodgers, Aaron's been like in camp, and they already made the decision. He said, and we took a lot of heat from it, but everything worked out, and I think that's how it's going to be. That's how I think it's going to be with Jordan Love too. But like I said, you got to get through this year. Like once you get through this year, like wow, that cap hit. That's you move on from that. That's like talk about light at the end of the tunnel. That's really going to help you guys out a lot. But you guys are well stocked. You're stocked well. For this transition, you really are. You are, and the division's getting tougher. It is like, well, Detroit is. Listen, I think that is a team that's. I'm not a genius for saying this. That's a team that's really that's built differently. This isn't our parents and our grandparents' Detroit Lions team anymore. Like they seem like a really talented and well coached team, and they're confident as well. And we'll see what happens with Justin Fields. I think he looked, for a guy that was kind of set up to fail with like very little talent around him. To be honest with you, he took really nice steps last year. So, but I think with Jordan Love, Jordan Love is in a much better position than Justin Fields was ever in.
Yeah, I would agree. I've obviously the Lions are the favorite to win the division right now. In one of our previous episodes picked them to win the division, although I think that the Packers have the most talented roster in the division. I think that they have the most all-pro and Pro Bowl players in the division. I think that, like I said, and this is another reason why I don't believe that they're rebuilding, because
you're right. They're not rebuilding. You're right.
Yeah, there's plenty of talent on the shelves. I mean, the big unknown right now is quarterback, and the offensive pass catchers. I mean, they could come out and put it together. They could come out and stumble and put it together later in the season. They could not put it together at all. But guess what? If they don't put it together at all, they're going to have 2 first-round picks next year, and they can move up and draft another quarterback if they really need to. I doubt that they will, because I believe in Jordan Love as well. But they put themselves in a position that whether it goes well or not, they're prepared. And that's what good teams do. And this is like, honestly, what few teams in the NFL are able to accomplish. I said it last episode that over the last 30 years, we went in as fans thinking that we could win the Super Bowl every single year. And what team could honestly say that other than the Brady years with the Patriots? No team can. They ride the cycle of team building where they become contenders, then they become win now teams. And then, they end up doing like what the Packers did over the last couple of years of kicking the can down the road with the salary cap. Well, this year, that's all starting to come to head. With how much money David Bakhtiari is due next year, there's just no way he's going to be on the team. With all these restructures and pushing the money down the thing to try to get one more chance at a thing. But even by doing that, they still have incredible talent on this team. And I believe, in my opinion, it would not surprise me if this team were a wild card team. It also wouldn't surprise me if they went 6-10. But
it wouldn't surprise me either if they make a wild card.
I'm an optimist.
No, and I like that. And you should be. Packers fans, you're hearing this from an outside fan. You should be optimistic. You should be optimistic. Your organization actually has been very well run for a very long time. And I think they're making these right moves at the right time. And like Bobby said, I kept saying like rebuild. That was just my default term that just spews from my mouth. I always knew this isn't actually a rebuild. You haven't gutted this team. We haven't even. We're talking about why you should be optimistic. Pros and cons of a young quarterback and young receiving core. We haven't even touched on the defense. That's not what this episode's about. And you guys have been. You already have playmakers on defense, and I think you've been adding impressive young talent over there as well. So it's not like this is, it's not like you traded your veteran left tackle. You still have your running game that's really impressive. And I've noticed that for fantasy owners that Aaron Jones is average draft position in fantasies in the 3rd round. I was making the argument the other day on an episode that he should be going at least second. He should be going 2nd round. So I think he's getting undervalued because of last year. And which I don't really think it was his fault or anything, but I think you guys are in great position. And if I were you, I would be excited too. Listen, man, time will tell, but I really like the way this team has been retooled. I like it a lot.
Me too.
All right, Bobby. we got to wrap it up because I've been drinking iced coffee for the past 2 hours. My bladder is ready to go like 4th of July fireworks over here.
Well, man, I was very happy to have you on. We'll have to have you on again, talking about the defense next time.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited for your team, man. And I want to point out too that I so appreciate. I'm not just saying this because I say it, but I think the Packers are so cool. I love their legacy. I love that they playing in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is not obviously it's a small city. It's not. I love that you've got the team is like owned by, or at least partially owned by, the fans. Buying shares. That's so cool. It's so cool. I love that. The frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. Like, I love the whole lore and everything and the history. So just don't beat my Giants. The only thing I don't want you to do is you're not allowed to beat my Giants, but you can beat the Cowboys, the Eagles. I'll be rooting for you guys in Washington. All right, listen, it's been real. Everybody have a great, safe 4th of July, Independence Day. Enjoy it. And I think we're all pretty much going back to work tomorrow, except for Nate, who's on vacation. So I'm going to do the outro. I think I found the right one. Okay, we're all set for the outro?
Yeah.
All right,
man. Happy 4th, man. Take care.
Take care, Bobby.
What's up, Title Tribe? We appreciate you watching the show. If you want to catch up on all of our college football content, make sure you subscribe to the CFB Nation by clicking their link below. Make sure you subscribe to the Toilets Titles Podcast Network by clicking our link below. And make sure to catch our other content by watching these videos to the side of me.